May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to thee, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I never turned it on. Can you hear me better? Excellent. All right, so this looks like a rather simple lesson, but because we've heard it so many times, it needs to be broken down. So pretend you're Jesus' disciples, and Jesus is teaching you this parable. And on one hand, you have this caricature of a Pharisee. Now, the Pharisees were a sect or a group of ultra-conservative Jews who believed in a spiritual practice that brought them closer to the arms of God. The practice in and of itself is a holy thing, and everything they were doing was good and based in Scripture. So it's not that their life as a whole has anything wrong with it, but the fact that he's full of himself. I even have a hard time reading this gospel because I'm kind of giggling at the Pharisee. Thank God I'm not like this idiot over here. Thank you, God, for not making me an idiot like I'm a sinner. I am holy. I say my prayers. I tithe. I'm great. So, it's funny. And then you have the person over here who is another caricature. Yeah, this guy is a tax collector who is a collaborator with the Roman government occupation, and he is beating his breast and saying, I'm a sinner, forgive me, Lord, I'm a sinner. So over these 2,000 years, both of these are caricatures, right? Unfortunately, the one over on this side, the Pharisee, has been used as an anti-Jewish trope for thousands of years, completely missing that this is about humility and prayer. So this person over here who's beating his breast can have the same thoughts that that guy over there has. We hear what the Pharisee is saying. We hear what the Pharisee is thinking. This guy is speaking out loud to God. Have mercy on me, a sinner. This guy, you're hearing what he's thinking. I'm great stuff. I'm going to heaven, you're going to hell, and all is right in the world. He's entitled, right? So, I have an example of this from my own life. My family was a church-going family. My dad was a choir director. My dad was also an actor in musical theater, so he had a lot of roles. When he was a choir director, he was his choir director self, and when he was praying, he was a very, very devout-looking person. So I noticed him in church when he was on the kneeler and his head was bowed. And I noticed that he read the Bible every night before he went to bed. And my mother would sit there in the pews about where Jim Barba is, and she would turn her head and look at every person that came into church and see what they were wearing, and look who she brought with her today. And if you look at surface only, it looks like my mom's a little bit distracted, and my dad is focused. But knowing them better, because I'm their daughter, I know that my dad can be oblivious, and my mother has grown in faith in ways that I never would have dreamed. She's had many falls from the cliff and had to pick herself up and start all over again. And her humility comes to her naturally, and she watches my sermons on YouTube every week. So we never know what's going through a person's head, but we do know that Jesus had a sense of humor, and that we religious people have a bad name. You need to laugh and lighten up a bit. That's you. Religious people who come to church, take church so seriously that we need to be this holy person and say your prayers. Are you reading your daily office? We need to beat our breasts because we're so sorry for what we did. Somewhere in between these two caricatures is what a faithful person is. It's fabulous that my dad read the Bible and that he knew how to pray and look beautiful while doing it. It's also fabulous that my mom had ADD and has used her whole life to try and follow the way of Jesus, and she's walking closer to God than many people I know. Not that I take stock of any of you. I don't. Are you laughing yet? Jesus knew that the disciples are trying so hard to follow Jesus, but you know how well they understand what he's saying, right? They're scratching their heads, they're never really sure where this guy is going next. But the lesson he wants us to learn is, yes, be the Pharisee, but keep your mouth shut and have a little humility. And yes, be over here, be sorrowful for what you've done, but don't think you're garbage. Don't think you are lesser than anybody, because you are more loved than anyone. The closer you get down to the earth, and the more humble you are in genuineness and truthfulness, the holier you are. As soon as you think you're holier, whoop, you go in over here and you're just as guilty as the Pharisee. So keep coming to church and be humble. Amen.